Hello and welcome to Lecture 5. In this lecture, we'll discuss the institutionalization of business ethics for promoting ethical and legal conduct in an organisation. At the end of this lecture, you will be able to recognize the importance of institutionalization in business ethics and build awareness about the three dimensions of ethical culture. Understand the philosophy and types of rules and regulations for business ethics dispute resolution. And be familiar with philanthropic issues and ways of being philanthropic. An ethical culture is important to foster good practice and impede bad practice in an organisation. As seen in previous lectures, the ethical behaviour of an organisation is defined by its stakeholders' evaluation. A key tool for implementation of an ethical culture is through the institutionalisation of good practices based on stakeholders' evaluation. Institutionalization helps in mitigating risk of misconduct in an organisation. Institutionalization relates to legal and societal forces that provide both rewards and punishment to organisations based on the stakeholder evaluation of specific conduct. In business, this relates to established laws, customs, and expected organisational programs that are considered normal in establishing a good reputation. Any deviations from expected conduct are often considered ethical issues and raise concerns among stakeholders. Institutions make an organisation aware about requirements, structures, and societal expectations of ethical conduct and provide both the rewards and punishment to organisations based on the stakeholder evaluations of specific conduct. For example, if a power generating station never exceeds its emission criteria, it becomes easy for them to get environmental clearance for their expansion project. An effective organisational practice of business ethics requires the three distinct dimensions to be integrated into an ethics and compliance program. These three dimensions are 1. Voluntary boundary, which is a management-initiated boundary of conduct that consists of beliefs, values, voluntary practices, and voluntary contractual obligations. For example, an organisation may ask its employees to contribute 1 day a year to voluntary work that helps the community. 2. Core practices, also known as best practices, are highly appropriate and common practices that help ensure compliance with legal requirements, industry self-regulation, and societal expectation. For example, Sarbanes-Oxley Act lays down a framework for protection of employees who report illegal activity in an organisation to authorities. 3. Mandatory boundary, which is an externally imposed boundary of conduct which includes laws, rules, regulations and other requirements. For example, in Australia, the Competition and Consumer Commission protects consumers against anti-competitive behaviour. A healthy ethical culture requires integration of all of these three dimensions into a comprehensive program. Laws and regulations are established by governments to set minimum standards of acceptable and responsible behaviour to make individuals aware of what is right and wrong. They prescribe specific behaviour in certain situations. For example, in Australia, as per the Age Discrimination Act 2004, an elderly employee must be provided equal growth opportunities in the workplace as provided to a comparatively younger employee. Government passes laws regulating business conduct as the society believes that the organisation cannot always be trusted to do what is right in certain areas. For example, a chemical manufacturing company may not be inclined to install a waste treatment system to dispose of its chemical waste due to the cost of installation. The two main categories of law are, firstly, civil law, which defines the rights and duties of individuals and organisations. It is a method to resolve conflicts and business ethics disputes between individuals or organisations. Breaches of contract or defamation of character are examples of civil offences. In general, civil law deals with private disputes between individuals and organisations and is enforced by individuals. Secondly, there's criminal law. Criminal law not only prohibits specific actions but also imposes fines or imprisonment as punishment for breaking the law. For example, murder, theft or business fraud are criminal offences. Criminal law is enforced by the state or nation. Laws and regulations help establish basic guidelines for responsible business activities. Laws and regulations that govern business activities in general fall into one of 5 groups. The 5 major groups are: 1. Laws regulating competition. Competition in business occurs due to rivalry among businesses for customers and profits. To overcome competition, businesses may indulge in unfair practices to protect their own interests. To protect society against such malpractices, laws regulating competition are framed. For example, Section 46, Part 1 of Australian Competition Law prohibits a corporation with substantial market power taking advantage of that market power by eliminating or substantially damaging a competitor. 2. Laws protecting consumers. Laws protecting consumers require businesses to provide accurate information about products and services and to follow safety standards. For example, in Australia, under the Consumer Product Safety Recall Guidelines, suppliers or government regulators can recall a product if a safety problem is identified. Government provides special levels of legal protection to people with specific vulnerabilities, mainly children and elderly people, relative to the general population. In the US, FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection enforces consumer protection laws to protect consumers against unfair, deceptive or fraudulent practices of businesses. 3. Laws protecting equity and safety. Laws promoting equity in the workplace are passed to protect the rights of minorities, women, older persons and persons with disabilities. Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of Federal Law prohibits discrimination in employment on the basis of race, sex, religion, colour or national origin. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission helps businesses in designing affirmative action programs to increase job opportunities for women and minorities by analysing their capabilities. The Equal Pay Act mandates that women and men who do equal work must receive equal pay to prevent gender discrimination by businesses. 4. Laws protecting environment. Environmental law has been enacted to protect the environment against negative business impact of polluting air, water and/or land. Many environmental protection laws have resulted in the elimination or modification of goods and services. Businesses are now undertaking positive steps to protect the environment. For example, businesses, through improved technology, aim to reduce waste and properly dispose of waste. 5. Laws that encourage ethical conduct. Violations of the law usually begin when businesses indulge in unethical practices to prosper. Therefore, laws and regulations are passed to discourage unethical practices and foster programs to improve business ethics. Different countries have different guidelines or laws to encourage ethical conduct among businesses by providing incentives. For example, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act and the Federal Sentencing Guidelines for organisations. Trust is a bond that holds businesses and their stakeholders together. Trust creates confidence and helps to forge relationships between businesses and stakeholders. It also allows businesses to depend upon one another as they engage in transactions or exchange value. Ethics helps in creating the foundational trust between two parties in a transaction. Gatekeepers are people who must trust and be trusted to make business work properly. They not only include accountants, who are essential to certify the accuracy of financial information, but also lawyers, financial rating agencies, and even financial reporting services, who are critical in providing information to stakeholders to gain an understanding of the financial position of an organisation. Gatekeepers must have high ethical standards and should be trusted by all stakeholders for operating within the professional code of ethics. For transparency and accountability within an organisation and its stakeholders, laws are formulated to encourage ethical conduct amongst businesses by providing incentives. For instance, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was enacted to establish a system of federal oversight of corporate accounting to curb corporate accounting scandals. The Act lays down the codes of ethics and transparency required in financial reporting to stakeholders. The Act gives the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, The power to monitor accounting firms that audit public corporations for issuance of true and fair financial results. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act makes corporations responsible for their business decisions and outcomes. For example, top managers of a corporation, that is CEOs and CFOs, are required to certify the completeness and accuracy of their financial reports. The Act also provides protection for whistleblowing employees who might report illegal activity to authorities. The key benefits of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act are 1. Greater accountability of top managers to its stakeholders. For example, the Act requires CEOs and CFOs to certify that their company's financial statements are true and without misleading statements. 2. Renewed investor confidence in corporations. For example, the Act requires mutual fund managers to disclose how they vote shareholder proxies, giving investors information about how their shares influence decisions. 3. Includes greater protection of retirement plans. 4. Imposes greater penalties for senior managers in case of wrongdoing. For example, a penalty of 10 years is established for mail or wire fraud. 5. Improved information from stock analysis due to accurate financial reporting by corporations. 6. Explanation by a CEO as to why their compensation package is in the best interest of the company. Every country develops its own framework or guidelines related to ethical and legal compliance to reduce the risk of misconduct by an employee in an organisation. These frameworks or guidelines are basically implemented through an agency or a commission. For instance, the US Sentencing Commission has developed the Federal Sentencing Guidelines for Organisations, which applies to all offences and misbehaviour committed by employees. The guidelines are basic and general in nature and provide incentives to corporations that discourage unethical conduct and frames programs for encouraging ethical practices. FSGO also provides mandatory training in ethics to members of the board or governing authority, higher level personnel, employees, and the organisation's agents. The guidelines are clear that ethics and compliance programs are important to detect the types of misconduct most likely to occur in an organisation. There is general agreement from both law and administrative policy that an effective ethics and compliance program is necessary to prevent misconduct and reduce the legal consequences. Philanthropy relates to a business's contributions to the local community and society, that is, its stakeholders. Donations are a common way for businesses to demonstrate philanthropy. There are a number of ways to practice philanthropic behaviour, including increasing quality of life, for example, through contributing to environmental initiatives, contributing to community building, for example, donating to schools or health facilities, and making use of a company's core competencies. For example, a food manufacturing company may donate a certain percentage of their produce to the disadvantaged. The institutionalisation of business ethics mainly relates to legal and voluntary mandated dimensions of organisational practice. The legal dimension lays down guidelines and policies for effective implementation of government-enacted laws and acts. The government have to put into place the rewards and punishment structure for corporations abiding and breaking laws. The voluntary dimension relates to being philanthropic and willingly providing services to the community and society for their well-being. Here's an example of philanthropy undertaken by the Walmart Foundation for the betterment of the community and society. Thanks for taking the time to view this lecture.